Yeah, so for me, for example, playing at the Berlin Philharmonic or in the Berlin Philharmonic had been one of those fantasy milestones in my head. I had, of course, been listening to the orchestra for years. Probably I went there for the first time when I was like 13, 14. And of course, I adored them. And I was sure I would never be able to play there. But of course, still it was like kind of a dream in my head somewhere. And because I didn't think it would come true, I could put that label on it. If I achieve that, I'm gonna feel like a real musician, like a real artist. Then I'm gonna be fine. Well, and then I won my first academy job, and my teacher, who was a member of the Berlin Phil, my teacher back then, he invited me once to play with them. And it was a week-long project with a very little tour at the end, and it was one of the most impressive orchestra experiences I've had in my entire life. And I remember that when I really knew I'm going to play there, I had to find someone to cover for me in another orchestra, but then there was this point when I knew, okay, I'm going to play there. And there was this brief moment when I was jumping through my room because I was so happy about that. But like 10 seconds after, I was already on my way to the Philharmonie to get the scores, and then I was practicing like crazy for 2 days, and then I did all the rehearsals and the tour, and afterwards, well, at least I cannot recall that I was proud or that this feeling of I've made it, I've done something big, was part of my emotional system in any way. And when I realized that, I thought, okay, maybe that wasn't the thing that's gonna make me feel like I'm a real musician. Maybe it's gonna be winning another academy or winning a master place or winning a job or whatever. So I had like some more ideas what could make me feel the way I wanted to feel. And right now I can say that all these initial ideas I've achieved all of them. And some days ago, I've even had that moment when I realized that what I'm doing right now is something that I could never have imagined I would be able to do. So I really had a very bad idea about my abilities when I started to study, or even when I decided that I want to start studying. And so there was a lot of positive surprises for me. But I think because I started my whole career, my whole process of becoming a musician in this mindset of I can't do it, I'm never going to be good enough, I also never reached that point when a certain achievement that you can put on paper, black on white, this point never made a difference eventually. And I needed a lot of time in order to realize that. For a while I was just waiting for me to feel capable, for me to feel like a real professional musician, and it just didn't come, and it made my life so hard. And now also with the coaching training that I'm doing, of course I'm getting deeper and deeper into the psychological background of the picture we have of ourselves, and self-awareness and conscious stuff and unconscious stuff, which builds into it. And I understand a lot better why my idea didn't work and what I can do instead. In this area, I'm really very, very much in the beginning of working on the idea I have of myself. That's probably the slowest process of all the ones that I'm currently in, because I'm really starting from not only the ground, but maybe like the the floor below the ground. So there's going to be a lot of work for me still, but I'm trying to really to really stop in those rare and short moments when I feel, hey, I've done something really good here. So for example, if I've played a concert and I feel something like proud afterwards or something like happiness, then I really try to stop for a second and I try to feel into the feeling. I try to give it room, I try to expand it, and I try to make like a marking in my memory so I can go back there when I feel like shit again, and I can go back to that memory and go back to that feeling of being a real musician, of being capable. And I'm collecting those moments now, and I'm trying to put them like in the front row of the shelf of my memories concerning music, and not putting those where I felt like I'm a loser in the front anymore. There is one pattern in my life which I think is one of the reasons why I feel the way I feel. I was in a school in Berlin, a high school, which was like, they had like a little bit of music orientation there, but it really wasn't anything like an elite music school. There was an elite music school in Berlin, or there is. I was even having lessons there because my first viola teacher was teaching at this other school, but I wasn't part of it. And I was also very happy with my school. I never wanted to switch, but I wasn't part of that school. And when I was 16, so like on the edge of still playing violin and switching to viola, I got into a scholarship, and I was the only person in the whole program who was just coming from a normal state music school. The other ones were like young students from the University of Arts or the Hans Eisler School. And they were all better than me, which is totally fine because they spent so much more time on their instruments and they had amazing teachers and they were already doing competitions. So it was real, my feeling of not being as good as them, but I still got into the program. So I think I actually deserved my place, but I just felt like I'm the worst here. And then I came to the Hans Eisler School, which was very surprising for everyone, including me. And again, I felt like I'm just like on the lowest edge of not belonging here anymore. People were the rising stars, like everyone practicing around me were winners of big competitions, and they had already achieved such fantastic things in their life. And I was just like, I don't know, I was feeling like a little puppy, which is just like trying to find the way out or the way in or whatever. And I really felt like I didn't belong, like I did in that scholarship program before. When I won my first academy, I was like the reserve winner. Someone cancelled his position, so I got in through the waiting list, so to say. So I told myself, I don't belong here. Then I applied for my master program, and I didn't get accepted at my own school, the Hans Eisler. I did get into the University of Arts, which is also great, but again, I didn't feel like I actually earned it because my own school didn't take me. And that's a pattern which is like jumping through my whole life, of getting something which is really great, but feeling like I don't deserve it. And I've been telling myself that story for a very long time until I realized it's actually just a story. And you can, to put it a little bit black and white, I believe that you can choose any story and tell it to yourself over and over, and it's going to come true. And usually we pick the negative stories, and that's how we narrate our lives. But if we like if we are a little bit more attentive, we can choose at least a neutral story or even a positive one, which we tell ourselves about our own life and our abilities and our future. And it's gonna have a different outcome for sure. For sure. That was gonna be one of my next topics also on Instagram. The short answer to a question is just yes. Yeah, there is something of that in my story. I guess it's more than that. It's like a recipe. There's different ingredients, and you need to look at every person's personal story to find out how exactly the recipe looks. But I think for most of us, there is at least one ingredient of imposter syndrome, yes. It's easy to say that if you go to an audition, it's not about winning, it's not about being better than the others. The people in the auditorium won't judge you, they just want to hear someone play a nice tune. It's easy to say that, but it's so hard to believe it, which is why I think you should just forget about the whole crap and find a different reason why you go there. So I think it's impossible to tell yourself that in a process where, like a process like an audition, where you start playing in round 1 with 30 other people and in round 3 or 4 there's one person left, it's impossible to tell yourself a story which excludes the idea of competition and criticism and being left out and being judged. So I think that's not useful. I think it's way more useful to say, I'm going there because I love music, and if I can play one note and someone is listening to it and I can put my special voice inside that tone, my special idea, I can show something of who I am through a note. And I don't even have just one note, I have like some 100,000 ones in an audition, if you count them all together. Then it can actually be a very nice thing to play there, to just go and play, to make music. And I think if you put it that way, you are not lying to yourself, but you are also not buying into a narrative which is going to sabotage you. So if you are a person who's leaning towards self-sabotage, I think you should not try to convince yourself of like the exact opposite story of what you are telling yourself usually, but you should find like a very much different story which comes from a different perspective, like to knock on another door, to say, I think that makes a lot more sense than just trying to think the opposite way of how you thought before. Well, I've actually already played as first violin, second violin and viola in orchestras. And so I think I can say what's the specific job of first violin, second violins and violas. A very good friend of mine who used to be the principal violist of the Berlin Philharmonics, he once said that the violas are like the red wine because they give a special taste to the orchestra. And that might be true. We don't have the most virtuous voice and we don't have the most important voice, but we do something which I would call essential. And if you can live with not being in the center of attention all the time, and if you like pulling the strings in the back where it's a little bit darker, and if you enjoy colors and if you enjoy romantic music, then the viola definitely is for you, for sure. And this prejudice that violists simply can't play Well, that's definitely not accurate anymore. It might have been in the past, but the level on any instrument is so high nowadays. So it's obvious that even violists can play their instrument nowadays. Well, I've never seen myself as a soloist, so I don't have like my most favorite concerto or something, but I love the sonata repertoire for viola. I also love the ones which are transcribed from different instruments, like the Brahms sonatas for clarinet. I think Brahms even transcribed them himself, right? So the voice, the melodies make a lot of sense for viola as well. I now recall that when I was very young, I had just switched to viola. I think I was 16. I listened to the Rebecca Clark sonata, and it's such a fantastic piece because it doesn't even sound like a real piece all the time. It's more like an explosive improvisation, or like exploded love for the viola. And Rebecca Clark is one of those people who have only written a few pieces which are famous, but I think they are very, very special. She has a very special voice, and well, if I could choose a sonata I would like to record, then probably it would be hers. I remember that when I had just started playing the viola, this was the piece I was working towards. Obviously, I've played it several times now already, but it's still one of the pieces I would always like to play again. I really don't want to give any advice, but since it's such a general thing, probably I can still say it. I think it is very important to listen to your inner voice, and that's such a lame sentence. I know, I'm sorry, because it's like part of every TV advertisement. Listen to your inner voice. It has become such a popular phrase which we are not even able to grab the essence anymore, because it's everywhere, and we just like our attention is flying past it because it's everywhere. But there is a certain truth to it. There are so many influences in the world out there, not only for musicians, but for every person who's growing up in our world. And there are so many directions we are pulled into, and so many things that push us in certain directions. And to have an idea about who you are without the pushing and the pulling is incredibly hard. And you need those moments of silence in order to maintain an idea of who you are. And you don't need to meditate an hour every day. It can be a short walk, or it can be a cup of tea that you drink without listening to music or without watching Netflix. It can be something super small, and it doesn't have to be there every day, but it should be there every once in a while, because otherwise the idea of who you are is just gonna be distorted by what's happening around you. And to find those moments to connect with who you are, that's very important in my eyes.